Speaking about slight change and modifying of views, you also recently stepped away from the label, shall we say, or the tag of Salafi. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Yes. Again, 20 years ago, I would ascribe myself to a movement in modern Islam called Salafism, and I would self-describe myself as being a Salafi 20 years ago. And I studied in a predominantly Salafi university. I graduated with a master's degree in theology from a predominantly Salafi institution. But I have found that I have disagreed more and more with many of the views of the modern movement, and I feel that it is simply easier and better for me to clarify that I do not hold such views, that I simply say I'm no longer part of the movement. And I have never, disrespected, let's say, the scholarship or the people. I still have sympathy for my teachers and my mentors in my university. I have a lot of respect for them, but I simply cannot really agree with, let's say, how most Salafis treat women, how most Salafis look at other sects and their hatred of certain sects of Islam. I am not anti-Sufi, or I don't feel this is conducive to the Ummah. And unfortunately, most Salafi, you can say that some Salafis are not like this, but generally speaking, most Salafis really have views that I disagree with. So in order to just demonstrate this, I say that I don't really ascribe myself to the movement, and theologically I'm obviously sympathetic to the theology of the early Muslims, but the movement as it exists on modernity and its manifestations and its views about living in the modern world, I think that they are not resources and authorities for us to go to when it comes to issues of modernity. Sometimes labels become detrimental. So I have been very clear, and I have not been ambiguous when I say that I have not ascribed myself to the movement as it exists today. In terms of my theological views, then I have not really modified or changed what I believe about the Quran and the Sunnah and the respect of the companions. This has not changed. But in terms of modern views and the scholars that espouse those views, i.e. of the Salafi ideology, by and large I find myself disagreeing with their main giants when it comes to pretty much most of modern living. How to deal with modernity, how to deal with democracy, how to live in a secular society, how to deal with women. Even what happened, the recent fiasco in Egypt, and how the Salafi scholars reacted. Basically pretty much the entire spectrum of Salafi scholars of Egypt. I find myself disagreeing with pretty much everything when it comes to modern issues. Not when it comes to classical issues of doctrine. When it comes to treatment of others, I totally disagree. I do not believe that our religion preaches us to be harsh towards other Muslims who believe in Allah and have iman and taqwa, even if they disagree with us theologically. You see, I am a theologian, I have a theology, but I don't think my theology tells me to despise or hate a Muslim who has a slightly different theology just because they don't do this and they do that. Look, in the end of the day, as Allah says in the Quran, the most noble of you are those who have the most consciousness of Allah. And that consciousness could be found in somebody of a different theology. That consciousness is possible that a person of another theology actually has more iman and more taqwa than I do. So I should judge people based upon that iman and taqwa rather than whether they follow a particular creed that I happen to follow with or not. So you see, my point here is that when the disagreements of interpretation in modern life are so many, it's just easier for me. Because let me just explain. When I used to call myself a Salafi, then I have to clarify, but I'm not this and I'm not that and I'm not this and I'm not that. And really, in the end of the day, when I'm not what Salafism represents for modern Islam, I might as well just say that I don't really represent the movement anymore. That the Ummah has different segments. But let each segment basically, take the good from other segments, and then when it comes to the bad, correct it in a gentle manner, or even for some bad, just ignore it and leave Allah be the judge. Not every single minor error has to be corrected right then and there. And I think that there's an element of pragmatism that many of our theologians and scholars, seem to lack, and Allah knows best.